Hello. How are we doing tonight? When I was on the way to my meeting tonight, I let the air dry my hair, and look at that. It's like a flock of seagulls. Anyway, and I have a light blue shirt on, which I never wear in my vlogs. So, it's been a long day today. I got up and I went and got coffee, and I made videos and wrote for a little bit and talked to Alex. He went to his mom's house after the meeting, he went to his mom's house after work because it was like the anniversary of his grandfather's passing while I was at my meeting with Tanya, because Tuesday nights we go to a meeting. So it's my home group meetings on Tuesday night, and it was really good. I kind of was like not in the mood to go tonight. I wanted to try a different meeting, and Tanya was like, no, I want to go, blah, blah, blah. And this always happens. It was interesting. We got there, and this woman that we're friends with that we hadn't seen for a long time, she hadn't gone back out, but she hadn't been going to meetings for a long time. She was there tonight, and it was great to see her. And so after the meeting, we stood around and we talked forever. And yeah, it was a good meeting. We talked about the 4-step tonight, which is inventory. And inventorying, resentments, anger, fear, sexual conduct. And there was like a newcomer that had just done her 4-step, and so she was asking for, look at this hairdo, I mean, seriously, she was asking for feedback on it. So everybody went around and kind of shared their experience. It's interesting, like when I did my first 4-step, I did it, so I waited until my second sponsor. My first sponsor was kind of just get a sponsor. Like when you get out of treatment, they're like, get a sponsor. You have to get a sponsor. And so I got a sponsor. And I didn't really relate to him at all whatsoever. And I remember I used to go with him and his like 2 or 3 friends to Perkins, after the same Perkins that I drove my car into, after we would eat, or after we would go to a meeting, we would go there to eat. And he would sit there and talk about like this girlfriend that he had in another state, and they would like make fun of him, and it was kind of like obvious that he didn't have a girlfriend. It was kind of sad, really. Anyway, he was a nice guy, but like I would call him and he wouldn't call me back and stuff. So I was bitching about it one day to a friend of mine. She was like, well, what about my husband? And so her husband, who then became her ex-husband later, became my sponsor. And he was my sponsor until I was 4 years sober, and he went back out and started using heroin again, and he died from an overdose. But he was my sponsor for most of my first 4 years, and he was fantastic. His name was Steve. He was a great guy. And I was really hesitant to do my 4-step. It's like you make an inventory, and then you look at the areas of your life. So you write down everybody and everything you have a resentment towards. That's like one thing. And then you make a list of your fears, and you make a list of your sexual conduct, and not just your sex acts, but ways that maybe you've used sexual behavior in relationships, or withheld in relationships, things like that. And my sponsor at the time also had me do an inventory of what it meant to be a man to me. And so I remember I was like really resistant to doing it. And so I got out of treatment the beginning of January. I got my first sponsor. He was my sponsor till like that June. And then I got Steve as my sponsor. And he kept on setting dates for me to do my 4-step. And so finally it was like I was back in school. I do not recommend anybody wait this long to do a 4-step. Just get it done when your sponsor tells you to do it. So finally it was like the holiday break from college. I had started school back again that fall, and I didn't have anything going on, and we were talking one night on the phone. It's so weird to think sometimes that when I got sober there were no cell phones, that it was like back in the day that we still have like, the phone with the cord that wrapped around, every room. And I was talking to him, and he said, when are you going to do this 4-step? And I said, I mean, I don't know. And he goes, well, every time that I've set a date for you, you've said you haven't had it ready, and I've just let you get away with that. He goes, what's your schedule like? And I was like, oh God. And I said, I'm totally open, except for work. You know, I'm not in school right now. I was working full time. And so, like, he picked a date. It was like the 22nd or 23rd of December that year. And it was right before Christmas. And he said, here's the deal. We're going to do, because like when you do your 4-step, you then do a 5th step with your sponsor, which is where you sit down. It doesn't have to be your sponsor, but almost everybody does with their sponsor. You sit down. You could do it with a priest or a rabbi or a spiritual guide, you know, whoever you want, person off the street. I mean, it's really up to you. But, I mean, if somebody's walked through the 12 steps, like, that's what they say, but that would not be what I would recommend. I would recommend that you do it with somebody that is in the program and has done one themselves and has several years of sobriety. So, in your 5th step, you go over it and you share that with your sponsor. And then you talk about the 4th column, and the 4th column is, what is your part in that? So, for example, like, if I had a resentment towards my mom, and then, well, what areas of my life did it, or why was I resentful at her, you know, and I would put on there because she was an alcoholic. Usually, I've had, you know, sponsors that have had me pick, like, the top 2 things. So, the fact that, you know, she was an alcoholic, and I know that sounds crazy, but, you know, like, back then I didn't really understand. So, her drinking was something I was resentful for. And then, like, you know, her not always being consistent as a parent with me, or maybe being afraid when I was growing up. So those are like my 2 things. And then you talk about, like, well, what areas of your life have they affected? And I mean, I don't even remember what I put. You know, you'd say like fear, ego, you know, confidence, on and on and on. And then the 4th column is what's your part in that. And my part on a lot of that was holding on to it and not setting limits and boundaries with my mom, you know, that I found that I didn't have to accept the same kind of behavior. But by the time that I was doing my 4-step with my sponsor, my 5th step, my mother had already gotten sober. So it was kind of a completely different, you know, she got sober on June 2nd of that year. So it was kind of a completely different perspective than I would have had, I think, had she not gotten sober. And my mom, when she got sober, was like in it to win it, like right away. Like, she got a sponsor, she was working steps. I think she had her 4-step done before I did. And so anyway, my sponsor said to me, we're gonna do it on this date. And I said, okay. And he said, if you don't have it done by this date, you need to find a different sponsor. Well, my fear of getting a different sponsor was greater than my fear of doing the 4-step, so I just sat down and I did it. But I remember I became so consumed with, like, the columns. Now there's these papers that people use and stuff, but back then it was like straight out of the book. And I got very consumed with, like, the columns and how to make the columns right, and I was calling him all the time, and he said, and I said I didn't want anybody to find, because I was living with my boyfriend and my best friend at the time, and I said I don't want anybody to find it, so I'm like writing it in code. And he was laughing at me on the phone. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen between now and when I see you. I mean, somebody might find this thing and then they'll know all my secrets, which, you know, it's funny because, like, when you do an inventory, you think, like, it just, your secrets really aren't that deep, you know? I mean, I don't know. My secrets weren't that deep, at least. They were, and most of them were embarrassing, you know? Like, they just were embarrassing things that I had done that I was not proud of. And so he goes, you're just bullshitting this and you just need to sit down and you need to get your inventory done. And I was like, you're right. So the night before, I sat down and I just finished the whole thing. I just, like, for like 3 hours, I can see my bedroom. It was like, we had a living room, and then our bedroom was like right off the living room, and my best friend's bedroom was like off of, like, it went down this hallway. And I could see myself in there, and they were like watching a movie, and I had the door closed, and I was like writing on the bed. And I just finished it like in 2 hours. I just sat down, an hour, 2 hours, I don't know. Just sat down there and finished it. And the next day I went to my sponsor's house, and, you know, my mother had this, she did do it that summer. She got sober in June, and then she must have done her 4-step that summer, because she had this very spiritual experience where she, like, went to this flowing well, and it was like, you know, in this pretty park, and they sat on the grass, and they went through it, and she just had like a really spiritual experience, and then her sponsor like gave her this stone when she was done, and all this kind of stuff. So I was expecting to have the same kind of spiritual experience. Now, I will tell you that when I do 4th and 5th steps with men today, I do try to do some kind of spiritual thing. I usually let them pick a place that has some kind of meaning to them, you know. Now, I've also done them in Denny's before, so you can do them anywhere. But typically, they want to do them in places where they can smoke, because usually when people come in sobriety, they still smoke a lot, and like that's some heavy shit going through everything in your life, you know. And so anyway, I remember I went to my sponsor's house, and he was like, okay, we're gonna go do it in here. We went and did it like in this room of his that was like an office, and they're like, their daughter had like 4 friends over, and the kids were running around, and we could hear it constantly, and the kids are screaming at each other, and she's like screaming through the door. And this is like my friend too that was also sober, and she was a bigwig at that time in not a bigwig, because there's no bigwigs, but she was like held like all these service positions in a sister program, and she was like, do you all want Kentucky Fried Chicken? And he was like, do you want chicken? I was like, yeah, I'll stay for chicken. And she was like, mashed potatoes, biscuits, what do you want? She was so sweet. And I'm sitting there, I can remember thinking to myself, this is not the spiritual experience that I thought I would be having today. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think that this, me doing my spiritual experience and my inventory of life, would be with a closed door and people screaming about fried chicken. I just didn't think that's what it was gonna be. But I did it, and my experience was not that I felt immediately great about myself. I just didn't, you know? I mean, I've heard people say that they walked away from their 4th step and 5th step and they just felt so much relief off their shoulders. I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel that way at all. And I had some shit, you know, like, growing up with an alcoholic mom, you see things you shouldn't see. And, you know, tonight it was interesting because a friend of mine said in the meeting, and I thought this was so true, you know, there are things that you don't really ever want to talk about, and so when you do your 4th step, what happens is it kind of washes that stuff away, but then the big stuff, like, it brings it to the surface, and then you're forced to look at it. And I think that's what happened that day. You know, like, I think sitting there with Kentucky Fried Chicken and kids screaming, I was really forced to look at, and I never thought about it till this moment, but like in the middle of this family that I had always wanted, I'm doing my 4th step, right? And there's 2 people in recovery, and you know, there's kids running around. It was a family. It was a family. And I think maybe it was a God moment. I don't know, you know, because in that moment, what I realized was, like, I really saw my mom for what she was, but it pained me. Like, I no longer was angry at her. I was sad for her. I was sad for her that she hadn't been able to be present for me for my childhood. You know, I was sad for her that she took so much responsibility for my drinking and my using. And I saw her in a completely different light. And I don't know, maybe it had to happen there, you know? I think that we learn lessons mostly in life by things that are not convenient. You know, if we could pick and choose our lessons in life, I probably wouldn't learn the lessons that have been the most important to me. The most important lessons I've learned in my life have been where I've gone through some shit, you know what I mean? And, you know, I remember when my sponsor passed away, was a really low part of my sobriety. I was in a relationship that I wasn't happy in. This was my first boyfriend. He knew it, I knew it. It just had, you know, we just weren't happy together. And, like, I had just started graduate school. And so I went to my 4-year sobriety birthday we used to go to this meeting called Surrender to Win. It doesn't exist anymore. It was at Charter Hospital, which doesn't even exist anymore in Indianapolis. And we would host a meeting, and then like the patients could come to the meeting. Well, they had decided that they weren't going to bring the patients to the meeting anymore because there were like 10 outsiders that came into the meeting. So many people were relapsing. So they had made a decision that they weren't going to bring the patients to the meeting anymore. And like for 2 months, my sponsor and I, we would like go to the front desk and we would like get the binder to chair the meeting, and we would sit in there, and 2 or 3 people would come and they would say, oh, did you hear about so-and-so? And this one woman that I remembered, she ended up going to prison, and just some really sad shit went down. And it was like 3 weeks before my sobriety birthday, and I said to my sponsor, my sobriety birthday was going to fall on that day that we would go to that meeting. It was a Wednesday night. And I said, I don't know how I remember that, but that was the meeting I always went to on Wednesday nights. And I said, like, do you want to go to a different meeting that night? Because not a lot of people are coming here. And he goes, no, let's just come here. And he goes, maybe, hopefully a couple people will come, and, you can share your story that night, and, I'll bring a cake, and it'll be great. And I said, okay. And it was my 4-year sobriety birthday. And the next week I came, and I got the binder, and it was like one other person, and my sponsor didn't show up, and I'd called him, and he and his wife were separated at that point. I didn't hear from him. And where am I at on time? Okay. And then the next 2 weeks I came and nobody showed up. And so I just sat there for like an hour and like read pamphlets and stuff like that, in case somebody decided to show up. Sometimes the best meetings I've been to has been where there's only been 2 or 3 people. So I came on my sobriety birthday, and nobody showed up. Not even my sponsor. I think I had left him like a voicemail message saying it was my birthday, like that a couple days before that or something. And I went in and I sat down, and it was 8 o'clock. I looked at the clock and I said, welcome to Surrender to Win or whatever. And I read the sheet through, and it came to birthdays, and I said, does anybody have 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? I mean, I went through it like that. And then I came, anybody have a year, 18 months, multiple years of sobriety? And I said, I'm Peter, and I'm, alcoholic addict, and today is my 4-year sobriety birthday. And I reached in, I took a coin, and I closed the meeting, and I went to the front desk. I've shared this on here before, and when I've shared this, people have criticized this for me, but I don't really know what else I was supposed to do at that time. I was 4 years sober, and 4 years is really young in sobriety for a lot of people. You have to remember, I didn't have a sponsor because I didn't know where he was. I found out later that he had gone back out and started using, and then he died. But I went up to the receptionist at the desk, and I said, are you going to bring the patients out to that meeting anymore? And she said no. She's like, they made a decision that they're not going to bring the patients anymore. And I said, well, nobody's coming to this meeting. And she just kind of looked at me, and I said, here, I'm going to give it to you. I said, I'm not coming back. And she said, okay. And then I called the organization that you call that's like in charge of meetings. And I said, there's low attendance to this meeting. Almost nobody's showing. I've been the only person there for 3 weeks. I don't plan on going back. So if somebody wants to run the meeting, So I don't know. Maybe they did after that, but I don't think they did. I never went back to that meeting again. And it's sad that it all went down like that, And then I got a call from my sponsor's ex-wife, and she told me, and I just was in shock, I'm still in shock. To this day, I still think about him, and I think about him like he's still out there, And every once in a while, I'll talk about him like in a meeting, and I'll say, like, well, my first sponsor, Steve, when he says this, and I'm like, when he said that, He said a lot of powerful shit to me, And he said a lot of things to me. Just because he went back and used and died doesn't mean that the things that he said to me didn't have value. And I thank him for being there for me for 4 years. And that's kind of how 12-step programs are sometimes, It's like people come and people go. It's hard. I've lost so many people, you know? Oh, just to do an update, my friend that I talked about on here, that his dad called me and I had heard from other people that he went back out and was using, and then I found out that he was actually still in the halfway house. He's doing great. So I'm really happy for him. His dad called me not too long ago, like last week sometime, and said he's doing awesome, he's doing great. And I was so happy for them. There's lots of success stories in recovery, you know? It's weird when I think back on those early days. It's been almost 20 years since that meeting. I mean, almost 20 years. It's crazy. It's like 11 years ago, October, Halloween weekend, I decided I was going to resign for working for a treatment program. That was the weekend I decided it, that Halloween. When I was in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, I just was like, I can't do this anymore, you know? I'm not happy there. Things have changed. Philosophies changed. It's time for me to go out. And that was hard, you know? I have such attachments to things. And I think to myself, God, 11 years, you know, like that's a lifetime. It's really, really a long time. Didn't even know my husband then. Somebody commented on a video of mine. They made, and I don't know if it's based on something that I said in a video, but they made a comment that I had said in a video that the reason that Alex and I went to marriage counseling was because I used to say mean things to him. That's not the reason that we went to marriage counseling. We went to marriage counseling for many different reasons. Neither one of us spoke very nicely to the other person at times. Not always, but at times. But that wasn't one of the reasons, but it definitely wasn't one-sided. I don't know what we would have done if we had not gone. Well, I know we wouldn't be together right now. Marriage counseling has absolutely saved our marriage. You know, we were talking about wanting to plan another trip, and I was like, well, what can we do? You know, maybe we can take a little savings out and do another trip that's not too expensive, blah, 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 whatever. That maybe not for so many days and stuff. And he was like, okay, I'm okay with taking money out of savings if you are. And I said, yeah, I'm cool with that. You know, but if we're going to do it like in November, I don't want to turn around and do it like in February again too, because we're, you know, so we were talking about that tonight, and we're supposed to go to San Diego for Christmas because his brother lives in San Diego, so we're all going to go out there this year for Christmas, which I said, and I think it's very nice, and I want to see his apartment and stuff like that too, but at the same time, I'm like, why don't we just all pay for him and his girlfriend to come home to Indiana, since her family lives here too? Like, wouldn't that make more sense? And Alex is like, yeah, but we just all wanted to get away for Christmas. Oh, it's going to stop. I'll be right back. Okay, so anyway, I said to Alex, I said, why don't we just, you know, all pitch in and fly your brother and his girlfriend here? Because, like, her family lives here too and whatever. And he was like, well, that's not the point. We're all trying to go to LA, or we're all trying to go to San Diego. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, you know, Alex had been looking at these houses and he was so excited about it and stuff. But anyway, I haven't really heard a whole lot since then. So I don't know what's happening. I'm just assuming that we're going to San Diego for Christmas. It's not going to cost us a whole lot. Airfare and then, you know, our room for the week. But for two people, it's not too expensive for us. And that's about it. I'm kind of sad that I won't see my cousin Caroline for Christmas, but my dad and my stepmom and I, and Alex, we always do Christmas like way after the holidays, like the 5th of January or something, because everybody's so busy. We've always done that. I've always done Christmas with my dad, like, well, when I was growing up, we would always do it like Christmas Eve day, and then he would take me to my mom's house. I've shared that story on here, haven't I? About how my mom got blazing drunk the first year they were apart. And I had come to my dad's house. He had this beautiful Christmas tree that we put up and all this kind of stuff. And then I had to come back over there that night because my mom like got belligerent and they were like afraid for me to be there by myself or something. So I came back to my dad's apartment and he had like pitched the tree into the wood. He lived in the woods. His apartment was like in the woods, and so he had like taken all the ornaments off, or some of them, but like the garland was still on it, and he had like pitched it in the woods. Oh, Dad. So I don't know what we're gonna do for Christmas, but I would love to take another vacation. You know, I just don't want to spend a bunch of money if it's gonna be unrealistic, and then we're gonna, you know, come back and be like vacation, Christmas, and then, you know, Miami, and Miami is expensive. Although this year Alex is talking about how he would like to maybe, like, so Ultra, we're going with Jason and Melissa this year, because they've never been. They're real excited about it. Ultra is always Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Alex is like, well, what if we flew in like Thursday night or Thursday afternoon, and then flew out Monday, and then we flew to like Cancun and went to like Playa del Carmen somewhere and stayed the rest of the week instead of like staying in Florida. And I'm like, okay, to fly from here to Florida, Florida to Cancun, and Cancun to Indianapolis, and 2 different hotels is going to be really expensive. No, it's not. He goes, it's not going to be any more expensive. I said, then you look into it. He goes, or what about Puerto Rico? I said, I would love to go to Puerto Rico. I've never been. He goes, okay, or what about the Bahamas? I'm like, you go research it, and you come up with how expensive it is going to be for each of us, and we'll see if we can do it. I feel like I'm sitting down so low tonight, but anyway. Oh, don't turn off. I said, and then, you know, if you really want to do it, otherwise, I don't have a problem staying in Miami for a week. You know, we can stay somewhere with Melissa and Jason, and then we can get an Airbnb for a couple days if they don't want to do that. You know, like, we don't have to stay somewhere expensive in Miami. Miami can be really, really expensive. And the thing is that week that we go is Winter Music Conference, and it is also Ultra Music Festival, and it's also spring break. So it's like every hotel is super expensive. Unless you book it early, I guess, but I don't know. Me, always trying to be smart with money. I was looking at trips though to Playa del Carmen in October because Renee, hey Renee, she knows who she is, had sent me some pictures. She just got back from vacation, and I was like, oh, I kind of like to just go lay by the pool for a couple days, even though I just got back. I have no excuse to feel that way. Whenever I go on vacation, I can go a long time without going on vacation, but when I get back from my vacation, I like want to turn around and go right away. So I was like looking at places in Playa del Carmen, and they're really aren't expensive in October. And I don't know if that's because it's like a really bad season to go, if like the rain is horrible. I don't know. If you guys know, let me know in the comment section below. I have no idea. I'd go back to Vegas for a couple of days, but damn, it's so expensive. I was looking tonight too on, Tanya had bought me tickets to go see Teresa Caputo, the Long Island Medium, and I was looking at the dates for that. I'm so excited. I've never been to a huge like psychic reading like that. Don't tell me if it's fake. I don't want to know if it's fake. I don't care. I just want to go and experience it. I'm so excited. So her people are probably watching all of my vlogs, and they're like gonna pick me out of the audience and talk about my mom, and then I'll be like, oh my god, my mom is speaking through Teresa Caputo, and of course everything I've ever said is on a vlog. When like psychics reach out to me and they're always like, I have a message for you. This happens, you guys, all the time. It really does. They'll be like, I have a message for you from your mom, and I'm like, okay, and they'll be like, yeah, like this happened, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I did talk about that in the vlog, so it could be that. Or, you know, like they'll say, oh, I see a figure around you and this is what she looks like. And I'm like, well, I've talked about what my mom looked like in my videos and shown pictures of her, so it could be that. I was gonna almost show baby pictures today and I forgot. So, like there's this one thing that, like, I feel like it's a sign from my mom, and it's kind of so obscure that I've never talked about it in any video. I've talked about that I have this thing, but I've never talked about it And like, if somebody reaches out to me and says, okay, so this is a sign from your mom, then I'll know they're real. Then I'll know they're real, because it happens like all the time. And it's not something that you could just like guess out of thin air, you know what I mean? I wanted to watch a movie today. I wanted to watch some kind of Alfred Hitchcock movie. It's kind of like a very beautiful like fall day. The leaves have all like fallen very quickly in Indiana. It's interesting. We haven't had a cold front come through, so I'm wondering if we're gonna get a cold front, because I mean, I'm looking at these trees and they're full, but there's a lot of leaves in the yard, and it was just kind of blustery today, and so the leaves were like blowing across. It reminded me kind of like, what do they call that? When it's warm in like October, they call it something. Shoot. Somebody put it in the comment section below. I can't remember what it's called. But, something summer. Harvest summer. Harvest Moon. That's a Neil Young song. I love that song. Do you guys like Neil Young? I love Neil Young. God, the stars are so bright out here tonight. I started that new book last night. I finished My Life as a White Trash Zombie. Oh my God, it is so fantastic. Did I finish it last night before I started talking on here? I don't remember. It is so good, you guys. Like, I cannot wait to listen to the rest of the series. But I started this book that I was talking about last night, The House of Incredible Beauties. It's pretty provocative, but it's about that era in like 1980 it starts in. This guy is a fantastic writer, whoever he is, but it's so funny because while he's talking, he talks about like 1980 as a character itself. He refers to her like 1980, the year, and it's very interesting, and it all centers around this transgender female named Angel, but like starts like right when she is wanting to wear women's clothes and things like that. It's very well done. It's very interesting how it's, I mean, it's just, and the voice that it's told in is just so beautiful. But it's very much literary fiction, and I'm in the mood to like read about zombies right now. You know what I mean? Or Harry Potter. Like, I've got the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban downloaded. I've got the second My Life as a White Trash Zombie downloaded. And so I don't know why I started this one, but I did. And so I'm going to listen to another half an hour of it. And if it's not good, then I'm going to put it away and say, it's not good. This shit ain't good. I'm going to listen to something else for a while. Yeah. This week is going fast. Now, Alex was not going to go visit his friend in Nashville because there wasn't enough room. And now he's thinking that he's going to try to like bungee cord and put like a tarp over her car so that he can put stuff from the trunk in there so that he has room to sit in her car so that they can travel back here. Because he just wants to road trip it with her one last time, which I think is so sweet. And I'm like, he's like, well, I'm thinking about going to Nashville again. Because last night I said, are you going to Nashville? He goes, no, I'm going to tell her that I'm not going to go. So today, Tanya and I were coming back from the meeting, and he goes, can you put Tanya, he was FaceTiming me with Carlitos, our nephew, and he said, can you put Tanya on for a second? So I gave her the phone, and she was like, hey, how are you? And he was like, I'm good. He was like, do you guys have any of those like carriage things for the top of your car, or like bungee cords or whatever? And she's like, yeah, I think we do. Let me check in the pole barn. And she was like, I'll see what we have. And then she's like telling him what to do and how to do it. And he's intent on going. I said, why don't y'all just like rent a U-Haul down there? Like one of those U-Hauls that you hook up for the day. It's like $60, isn't it? He was like, because we don't want to spend any more money than we were already spending. I said, okay. But if you really want to go that bad, I guess you could do the U-Haul. And I found out that like the bus leaves at midnight and he gets in at like on Thursday, and he gets in at like 5 a.m. on Friday, and then they're coming back here Saturday morning. So he's literally going to be in Nashville for 24 hours and then the road trip home. I'm like, is this really worth it to you? I mean, I guess if it was me, I'd want to do it. I don't, to be honest with you, like I haven't said this to him yet because we didn't really get a chance to talk about it tonight. But I said to him, or I feel like, why not just drive your car down there, you know? Like, but then he doesn't get to drive back with her, I guess, right? Because when he was talking to Tanya, I said, are you going to Nashville again? He goes, yeah. And I said, he goes, I didn't have a chance to tell you today. And I was like, well, we talked all day. And he was like, well, I wanted to talk to Sarah first and see if she cares. And I was like, oh, I want him to be able to go. I want him to be able to spend time, you know, with his best friend. They're going to go house hunting this week because she's looking for a house here. Alex has always been so intent on moving, and now he's just like wants to go back and forth between Indianapolis and Florida like I do. And but I wonder if that will change now that Sarah's here, because he'll probably see her a lot, I would think. They were very much like Netflixing and chilling long before Netflixing and chilling was a thing. Like, when I first started dating Alex, I'd be like, what are you guys doing? And he'd be like, well, I'm over at Sarah's house. She can't see me the rest of the week because she has to work, so I'm just gonna sit over here and we're gonna watch a bunch of movies. And she'd be like in the background, and she'd be like, you can come over. And so I would come over there for like an hour, and they'd be watching movies in their pajamas, like up on the couch, you know, with like pizza sitting around, because they like had a house together in college. So like, this is the shit they did together in college, you know. My college was so different. Are you guys like that with your college, like girlfriends and guy friends, that you like just used to sit around and like eat pizza and watch movies on Sundays, hungover or whatever, and so you kind of like repeat that as you get older with the same people? I don't know. And if you met your boyfriend and girlfriend in college, like, do you, and now you're married to them, or they're your boyfriend or girlfriend, do you guys like do the same things you did in college now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, if you took walks or went and saw movies, like, did you start traditions in college that you still continue now? I think that would be interesting. They say that the relationships that last the longest are the ones that people that meet in high school. So I wonder what the rate of success is for couples that meet in college. I think that would be an interesting study to see the, you know, the stats on. I wanted to go over to my in-laws tonight, but as soon as I let Tanya off, Alex was like, because they don't live too far from Tanya, Alex was like, well, I'm on my way home, and I was like, okay. He was so hungry today. He was like, I'm so hungry for Venezuelan baked food or cooked food. And so he asked his mom if she'd make him a rapist. And so he texted me, and he's like, oh my God, my mom made me a rapist. They were the best ever, and blah, blah, blah. He was so excited about it. I was like, you can bring me one home. He's like, there are none left. Yeah, because he could sit there and eat 4 or 5 of them in a row. I've actually been losing weight, and I don't know why. It has nothing to do with my eating habits whatsoever. I haven't been eating really healthy, so I don't necessarily know why I've been losing weight. But I got on the scale today, and I had lost like 5 pounds since we got back from Vegas. And I'm like, I wonder how I'm losing so much weight. Like, in Vegas, it makes sense because we walked around so much, and I was really active. But back here, it's not like I'm super active, you know? It's like, I walk around, you know, I go from my car to my office, I make videos, I sit in a chair and make videos, I sit in a car and make videos, I sit at the desk and I put videos up. So it's, you know, not like, it is so foggy right here. It's not like I'm doing, you know, a bunch of really exaggerated calisthenics, so to speak. I'm not. So I don't know why. Maybe it is the things that I've been eating lately. I've been eating those bagel sandwiches and stuff, but you would think, and that corn, I mean, it's not super fattening or high in calories, but still, like, a bagel sandwich is a bagel sandwich, you know what I mean? Like, it's still, like, bagels are not super healthy. Cream cheese is not super healthy. I didn't get light cream cheese. I put cheese on it. I love cheese. Someone commented on my comment section, they said, do you think being a vegetarian is hard? Try being a vegan. I thought, I can't imagine. That's why I'm not vegan, because I don't know that I could do it. 16 minutes I've talked, oh my lord. What is that? 24 and 6. 30. Oh, 40 minutes I've talked already. Do you feel like I'm shrinking on this camera? Like, what the deal? What the deal? I miss my mom sometimes for the funny things that she would say. She had always these, like, funny little sayings that she would say. Like, when I was a kid and I would say to her, I'm thirsty, she'd say, because she was a teacher, see? So, thirsty, not thirsty. I'd say I'm thirsty. This is why I have, like, a problem saying, like, people don't understand why I have a hard time with my T's and my S's. When I was growing up, I had to be, like, in speech therapy for my T's and my S's. So people always come to me and they correct me for saying hot toddy instead of hot toddy. But it's like, unless I'm thinking it, like, I go naturally to that. So thirsty was the same way. And I would say to my mom when I was a kid, I'm thirsty. And she'd say, nice to meet you Thursday and Friday. That wasn't very nice of her, was it? But she did. She said it, and we just get a real big laugh out of it. We thought it was so funny. I used to do handstands. Well, not handstands. I couldn't do a handstand to save my life. But, like, cartwheels and somersaults and stuff in the front yard for hours. And my mom would say, well, you just think you're Nadia Comaneci, don't you? I didn't know who that was. And then they made this Lifetime movie or made-for-TV movie about Nadia Comaneci, and then I was obsessed with it. I was absolutely obsessed with that movie. Did you guys ever see it? It was so good. And then in the summers, we used to make those Wet n Wild, you know the things where you slide on them, but we would make them with garbage bags in our front yard, and we would hose them down because we wanted them real, like, the water to be real thick like a pool. And my mom would come out and she'd be like, oh, you are ruining my grass. No, Mom, we're not ruining your grass. It's going to be fine. We're going to take them up as soon as we're done. And then it would get late. We'd all rush in and get to sleep. And so we're going inside for dinner, and we forgot to take them up. And the next day we come out there, and true story, the grass underneath it would be yellow, and my mother would be livid. Oh my God, you ruined the grass. I'm like, Mom, it's just grass. Get over it. But I would ruin the grass from those slip and slides, Wet n Wilds, I called them, slip and slides. I knew as soon as it came out of my mouth that Wet n Wild was wrong. A little house right there. All these houses being built around there, and that little house is old. So people are just like, nope, we're not moving. Can't have it. I like that. Do you know, I always talk about those frosty graham cracker things that my mom made when I was like a kid. It's like graham crackers and you put white frosting inside of it. No, she called it a cookie because she couldn't bake. I mean, she couldn't, true story. She'd burn every chocolate chip cookie she made, and then she'd spend there for, you know, an hour. Because back in the day, we didn't have the rolls and stuff, you know. I mean, we did, but I don't really remember when that started happening. So we would, like, make cookies from scratch with flours and sugar and everything, and then she'd burn every last one of them because of our cookie sheets were so burnt. Do you remember your mom would have, like, the cookie sheets that were, like, burnt to a crisp on the bottom of them? Well, every single one of ours was burnt. And she'd say, oh, you just spray it or put some butter on it. You take butter, do you remember that? And you would take, like, a paper towel and you put butter on it, and then you would swab it all over the thing. But it would sometimes just burn them more. And then my mom would go, oh, I like the burnt ones. I like them anyway, burnt, so that's why they're okay if they're that way. No, they were horrible. You couldn't eat them. They were so bad. Her Christmas cookies looked like they were just sadly Christmas cookies, you know? They were like sugar cookies, and then she'd put, like, the sprinkles on them in the oven, and so, like, the sprinkles would even kind of burn a little bit. My mother could not bake to save her life. And then she'd want to take those cookies over to, like, my Aunt Kathy's house for dessert, And, you know, my aunt and my mother fought like cats and dogs their entire life. And my aunt, who everything had to be beautiful, you know, had gone and like had some women's luncheon and this and that, and so she would have all these extra cookies, and they were like, my aunt used to make them cookies from a cookie press. Do you remember that? A cookie press. I mean, perfect wreaths, okay? Perfect cookie pressed wreaths, Christmas wreaths with heart, like what do you call it? The hot, what are those things called? The hot things. Oh shoot, what are they called? Why can't I think? But anyway, those little things that they would be like the holly. I mean, they were perfect. Every one of them. Or she'd make the cornflake wreaths. Do you remember those? I love those. Or those cookies that you put the Hershey Kiss inside of them. They're like peanut butter and Hershey Kiss. I love those cookies too. My aunt, she made the most beautiful cookie cutter cookies, pressed cookies. And then my aunt felt so bad that she put a couple of my mom's sugar cookies on there that were burnt to a crisp, brown, and then had burnt sugars on them, or sprinkles on them that were ugly. And my aunt forever thought it was me that was making them, and so she felt bad. So she put a couple of them on there, and my mom would say something to her, because they were always trying to get into a fight, and she'd say something about, well, look at your cookies next to mine, they don't look very nice. And my aunt would say, well, you know, those are Peter's cookies, so I put them on there so he wouldn't feel bad. And she goes, those aren't Peter's cookies, I'd make those. And then the fight would have, well, what are you saying, Kathy? My mom would say, are you saying that I don't know how to bake cookies? Well, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't know. My mom, she's talking about how she made cookies from a press too. I never saw her once make a cookie from a press in my life. She'd say, I can bake just as well as your aunt. Or if they really got into it, she'd say to my aunt, this was always the thing that she would say. Like, my aunt would never fight her about, like, who was a better baker and stuff like that. She just didn't need to, right? You know? I'm sitting there telling this story, and I go to adjust the camera, of course, and of course. But no, my mom would sit there, and then she'd, like, look at all of it. I mean, she's tone deaf. You just can't carry a tune. I wasn't singing Hoosiers. Like, that meant anything compared to the cookies. And one time, okay, this was so funny. So, I think I've told this on here. So, my mom always brought the deviled eggs, okay? But one year, we were going in, and like, she hit ice, and she had a deviled egg, you know, thing that you put them in and everything like that. She had, like, you know, plastic wrap over it, perfect. She made great, my mother made great deviled eggs. Well, she hit this ice on the step, and the thing went flying, but like, she's holding onto the plate, and all of the eggs are like hit the door, right? All of them. And she looks at me and she goes, why didn't you take my arm? My eggs are ruined. And I'm like, so she goes inside and she's yelling at my aunt about these eggs, and she's yelling at me and all this kind of stuff. So after that, they just had my mom bring rolls. She would just bring rolls. They always had to get them from Taylor's Bakery. And my mom would always bitch, because Taylor's Bakery is this really nice bakery in Indianapolis. And my mom would say, those rolls are so expensive, right? So she would always say, like, when she would say to my, you know, aunt, she'd say, like, Kathy, like, what do you want me to bring for Thanksgiving? And my aunt would go, just the rolls. That's all I ask you to bring is just the rolls. And so she would need to stop messing with this camera. So anyway, the whole time, okay, so we went to Chicago, and all of us, and the whole time that we're there, my mom is bitching and moaning, okay, about these rolls, and how much they're expensive, and Easter, I think it was Easter, or something like that. And so we were taking a cab somewhere, and my cousin was sitting in the front seat, and my mom goes, can I pitch in for the cab? And my cousin turns around, and she never said a bad word to my mother. The only other thing she ever said, and this crushed my mother, was she told my mom one time, she goes, zip it, like that. So anyway, oh, my window is so foggy. What is going on? Is it just dirty, or is it foggy? I can't tell. So anyway, this one time, when we were in Chicago, my mom said, can I pitch in for the cab? Because my mother was like such a pinch penny. And my cousin like whipped her head around. She goes, save it for the rolls. Oh, Caroline. But that was as bad as it ever got in our family. Like, we never really, I've got to see the heat index here. I don't want to put it up to, like, our family never really fought that much. I guess my mom and my aunt did. I never saw much of it though. The only time I saw them fight was like, my aunt was a drinker, and my aunt would have had a lot of drinks, and my mom wouldn't know that that's what it was. She'd be like, I don't really understand why she's being this way. And we'd get in the car and like leave Christmas or something, and I would say to my mom, like, she had been drinking, like, you know, why don't you understand that's why she was talking to you that way? And my mom was always kind of oblivious to people's drinking, I think. You know, she was so focused on her own when she was drinking, then she got sober. I think she was just oblivious to everybody else's drinking. And so she would say, was she really, like, she was really drinking, like, that hard? And I'd say, yeah, Mom. And I think my mom always looked up to her so much that she didn't want to think things like that about her, if that makes sense. Like, she just didn't. She didn't want to think negatively about my mom or about my aunt, you know? And I think she always saw drinking as having a negative connotation. My mother talked about it for years, even sober, the stigma that women have in our society as drinkers, you know? And I don't know if that's because she grew up in the 50s and the 60s, you know, and back then, like, women that were problem drinkers were, you know, they'd always say things, like my mom would say, oh, they always say things about women like, that poor woman. You know, like, oh, her life is so sad. She's like, they don't say that stuff about men. You know, they're like, he needs to man up, or he needs to do this. She's like, they always, like, treat us like we're so just, like, pitiful. My cousin texted me not too long ago, and she said, wouldn't you just wish we could have one more holiday with your mom, my mom, and grandma, you know? I think this was, like, actually before her dad passed away. It's weird when you think about that, you know? You never know when it's going to be somebody's last holiday. Like, even the last time that my aunt, for Christmas, you know, like, which was the last time I had Christmas with my aunt and uncle, period, because I didn't have a Christmas with my uncle last year. But Caroline's like, I have Christmas presents from Dad. Like, I've got to give them to you. I'm like, okay. I mean, you can, she's like, no, he would want you to have them, you and Alex. And I was like, okay. But that last Christmas, you know, my aunt was on an oxygen tank, and she just was so bad. But I never once, like, even as we're, like, we had to, like, walk her from the living room to the kitchen, and then she had to sit in the kitchen, and then we had to move the chair, and she had to walk from, like, the kitchen to, you know, like, the doorway, and then we had to open the doorway, and she wouldn't let us carry her. We had to walk her to the car, and by the time that she got to the car, she was, like, so panicked, she just wanted to get in the car. And even then, like, I didn't think, like, this is it, you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes we're in such denial about the real issues at hand. I don't know. Like, I knew things were bad, because we had gone out to dinner with my dad and my stepmom, and my dad was really close with my aunt and uncle, if you guys know, you've heard me tell those stories. And he said that he had seen her, and that she had said some things to him, and he said to her, you know, Kathy, this is not good. And she said, are you telling me that, like, we're at the end? And he said, I'm telling you, things are not good. Like, this is not a good prognosis. And she goes, don't bullshit me. And he goes, I'm not bullshitting you. This is bad. Like, yeah, this is bad. It's weird, my aunt had lung disease. She smoked, but she quit smoking when she was like 40, and she was in her 70s when she passed away. I don't know if it's from that or not, you know? Every once in a while she'd have a cigarette. I mean, once in a blue moon. My mom's funeral, she called it her funeral cigarette with her friend in the garage. She said, yeah, she goes, she and I, we go to all these funerals, and we always have a funeral cigarette with our friends in the garage. I've reflected a lot today and yesterday on my life the last couple years, you know, and it's like a lot has changed in my life. I was watching this documentary. This is what got me thinking about it, on Netflix, and it was called Jules Catch One. It was fantastic. It was about this African American woman that she owned this bar in Los Angeles for 40 years. And she also started this, I think she's still alive. She started this, I didn't watch the last 2 minutes of it, so I don't know. Oh my God, the battery's almost dead. But she also started this health organization, this low-cost health organization, and she's just a fantastic woman, you know? And she's closing up the club at the end of it, and after 40 years, she sells it. And she like has a really hard time walking away from it. And she's like, you know, like, so much has changed, you know, in the last couple of years. And I think about that, it's like, when I think the number one thing for me is that my mom never got to meet Alex, and Alex never got to meet my mom. And some days I think it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter, honestly. But it doesn't mean that I don't wish that they had, you know, or that Alex would have some perspective on what my mom had been like. And I'm grateful that he got to meet my aunt and uncle. And just like I'm grateful I got to meet, you know, his family members, his grandfather before he passed away, and his grandma now, who's older, and, you know, his mom, and I don't know. I'm feeling very blessed today for my life. So, I'm going to end it here, because the battery's almost dead. And, yeah, I love you guys. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.